a ghost of the future on the brink of war. Imagine the 30s. The world is holding its breath on the brink of the greatest war in human history. The air smells of soot and gunpowder from guns that have not yet been fired. In the laboratories and testing grounds of the great powers, work is in a frenzy. Everyone is searching for that wonder weapon that will provide an advantage on the battlefield. The infantry, the queen of the battlefield, still goes into bayonet charges with rifles inherited from the previous century. But the most far-sighted minds already understand the future lies in automatic fire. And so, in this anxious, pre-storm silence, news comes from young, hungry, but incredibly ambitious Soviet Russia that shocks military attaches all over the world. The Red Army is adopting an automatic rifle, not a machine gun, not a submachine gun, but a rifle that every soldier could use for both accurate single shots and for delivering controlled bursts of automatic fire. It was like announcing the creation of a combat laser, in our time, a technological leap, ahead of its era by decades. This rifle was destined to become a legend, and a tragic legend. Its name was the AVS-36. The Simonov automatic rifle, model of 1936. Part 1. The Student and the Teacher. The birth of a dream in an era of revolutions. To understand the phenomenon of the AVS, we must go back even further to the very beginning of the 20th century. Imperial Russia, lagging in industrial development, was struggling to master new types of weapons. But within its depths, brilliant design minds were maturing. One of these was Vladimir Grigorievich Fyodorov. This man was a true prophet in the world of weaponry. As early as the years of the First World War, he created the world's first workable automatic rifle, a machine gun of 6.5 mm caliber. His Fyodorov Avtomat was a real sensation, even though it was produced in tiny batches. Fyodorov didn't just create a weapon. He created a school. He wrote the fundamental work, the fundamentals of automatic weapon design, which became the Bible for a whole generation of Soviet gunsmiths. And among his most talented students was a young, stubborn, and incredibly hard-working man named Sergey Gavrilovich Simonov. Simonov is a classic story of a self-made man, Soviet style. Hailing from a peasant family, he rose from being a metalworker to a chief designer. He had no formal academic education, but his genius lay in an intuitive understanding of metal and mechanisms. He literally lived in the workshops, breathing in the smell of machine oil and metal shavings. And he, like no one else, absorbed Fyodorov's idea. The future lies in automation, in individual automatic weapons for every soldier. Imagine the atmosphere of those years. A young Soviet republic surrounded by hostile states, amidst devastation and isolation, attempting an industrial leap. The slogan, "Catch up and overtake," concerned not only tractors and steel, but also, first and foremost, armaments. An ambitious task was set to equip the Red Army soldier with the most modern weapon in the world. And Simonov, with his dream of an automatic rifle, turned out to be the right man at the right time. Part 2. AVS-36. A technical breakthrough or an engineering phantasmagoria? So, let's finally understand what this legendary rifle actually was. I will explain it as simply as possible, as for someone far from the world of weapons. The heart of the beast, gas-operated automatic system. When you pull the trigger, a shot is fired. The powder gases with enormous force push the bullet forward along the barrel. An ordinary rifle like the Mosin uses only a tiny part of this energy, and the rest is wasted. Simonov's genius was to catch these gases and make them do useful work. A small hole was drilled in the AVS's barrel. Part of the gases following the bullet entered through this hole into a special chamber, where it struck a piston. This piston, like a steam locomotive pusher, recoiled backward at high speed. The magic of locking, the vertical wedge. This is perhaps the most brilliant and most problematic part of the entire design. To fire, the barrel must be tightly closed at the rear at the moment of firing, otherwise the hot gases will blast right into the shooter's face. In conventional rifles, this was done by rotating the bolt. Simonov came up with something elegant and complex. His bolt was locked by a wedge, a small steel block that, at the moment of firing, rose upwards like a deadbolt, mechanically connecting the bolt to the barrel. It was beautiful, compact, and provided a very high rate of fire. Feeding, the curved magazine, another unique feature. The cartridges for the Mosin rifle had a rim, a small flange at the base of the cartridge case. Because of this rim, they were inconvenient to stack in standard straight magazines. They would catch on each other. Simonov found an elegant solution. He created a curved, sickle-shaped magazine holding 15 rounds. It was convenient and could be quickly changed. But there was an alternative. The rifle could also be loaded with good old clips from the Mosin, which was very important for an army accustomed to old standards. Weight and power. The AVS was no lightweight. Imagine, for kilograms, that's the rifle itself. Now, add a heavy magazine, a massive blade bayonet, which, by the way, could also be used as a bipod for prone firing, and cartridges. In the end, the soldier held a club weighing over 6 kilograms and 1.5 meters long. It was powerful, but not easy. The bullet left the barrel at a speed of almost 850 meters per second, a monstrous energy. And the main feature, the ability to fire in bursts. Imagine yourself as a Red Army soldier somewhere at Kokken GOL or in the Winter War. Facing you is a Japanese soldier with an Arisaka rifle or a Finn with a Mosin. They can make 1, maybe 2 aimed shots per second. But you can, aiming the formidable barrel of the AVS at the enemy, fire a short, lethal burst, 5 or 6 shots in a couple of seconds. For the infantry of that time, this was akin to magic. Technically, the rifle could fire up to 800 rounds per minute. In practice, of course, this was impossible, but even 20 to 30 aimed shots per minute or 100 to 150 shots in short bursts was a colossal advantage. Part 3. The Devil in the Details. Why the brilliant idea clashed with harsh reality. And now it's time for the tragedy. Because even the most beautiful idea, when faced with the reality of war, production, and the human factor, shows its true weaknesses. Problem number 1, complexity. That very magnificent vertical wedge I told you about was catastrophically sensitive to dirt. A single grain of sand, a single piece of debris, if it got into the wedge lifting mechanism, would turn the rifle into a useless piece of metal. And now remember where this rifle was supposed to fight. The endless dusty steppes of Ukraine, the muddy trenches near Rzhev, the swamps of Belarus, the snows of Karelia. The ideal cleanliness of the testing range was an unattainable luxury here. Problem number 2, production. The Soviet Union in the 30s made an incredible industrial leap, but it came at a great cost. There was a shortage of qualified workers, the machine tools were often outdated, and the culture of production was in its formative stages. And the AVS-36 was, in essence, a piece of jewelry work. Its receiver, the main component, was long and complex to machine. Each of those wedges required the highest precision. At the Izhevsk factory, where the production of the AVS was launched, the percentage of defects was frighteningly high. Imagine a worker, a former peasant at a machine tool, has to manufacture a part with micron precision. It was almost impossible. As a result, the cost of the rifle skyrocketed, and reliability from batch to batch was unpredictable. Problem number 3, the human factor at the top. And here we come to the key moment of our drama. The AVS-36 had a powerful enemy, and this enemy sat in the Kremlin. His name was Joseph Stalin. The memoirs of the People's Commissar of Armaments, Boris Lvovich Vanikov, have been preserved, describing how Stalin felt about the idea of automatic fire from a rifle. Comrade Stalin believed that a Red Army soldier, lacking sufficient training, if given the ability to fire in bursts, would thoughtlessly waste cartridges, spraying fire over an area without aiming, Vanikov wrote. And there was a terrible logic to this. The Soviet Union was preparing for a war of mass armies. Millions of soldiers, conscripted from villages, often poorly educated, were to receive the simplest and most reliable weapon possible, like a hammer, a rifle that isn't afraid of dirt, that can be dropped in the mud, wiped on a sleeve, and it will fire. The complex, finicky AVS, which required careful maintenance and handling, was poorly suited for such an army. Stalin insisted on a self-loading rifle one that fires one shot per trigger pull, but without the need for manual reloading. It was a compromise between rate of fire and ammunition economy. Problem number 4, critical failures. Rumors circulated, and later they were confirmed in reports, that with certain wear or assembly errors, the entire bolt group could fly straight back into the shooter's face. Imagine the horror. Of course, these were isolated cases, but in the army, such a reputation for a weapon becomes permanent. A soldier must trust his weapon, not fear it. Part 4, Economy versus Dream. Why the country couldn't afford the Wonder Rifle. Let's step away from the mechanics for a moment and look at the bigger picture. The 30s were the era of the Great Depression in the West and industrialization in the USSR. The country was working to the point of exhaustion. The first 5-year plans. They needed to build factories, power plants, tractors, tanks, airplanes. All resources were limited. Steel, electricity, skilled personnel. The production of one AVS-36 cost several times more than the production of the good old Mosin. And with the same money, they could make several thousand cartridges, a dozen grenades, train soldiers. War is always horrifying accounting. The military and economists calculated what is more effective for victory in the coming war. One automatic rifle in the hands of one soldier, or 3 ordinary rifles in the hands of 3 soldiers. Under the conditions of an enemy at the gates and the need to arm millions, the answer was obvious. Quantity, brought to a certain level of quality, is more important than individual quality. Moreover, there was a doctrinal problem. The Soviet military doctrine of the late 30s placed a huge emphasis on artillery and mass strikes. The infantry was supposed to finish the job after the artillery, clear the trenches, and go in with bayonets. For this, the simple and reliable PPSH-41 Shpagin submachine gun was ideal for close range and a self-loading rifle for medium range. The AVS occupied a neither here nor there niche for accurate shooting. It was a bit heavy and complex, and for dense automatic fire, it was underpowered and still inferior to machine guns. Part 5, The Rival. How Tokarev outpaced Simonov. The history of the AVS-36 would not be complete without mentioning its main competitor, the SVT-38, Tokarev self-loading rifle. Fyodor Vasilyevich Tokarev was an experienced, hardened old wolf of the weapons business. His rifle was simpler. It used a more familiar and less contamination-sensitive tilting bolt locking system. It was more technologically advanced in production. And, most importantly, it was specifically self-loading. It did not have an automatic fire mode. This fully corresponded to Stalin's vision. The competitive struggle between Simonov and Tokarev is a separate series with intrigues, tests, and patronage in high places. And in the end, simplicity and compliance with Doctrine 1. The SVT-38, and then its improved version, the SVT-40, began to gradually displace the AVS from the troops. It is curious that even the Finns, encountering both rifles during the Winter War, preferred captured SVTs, finding them more reliable. Epilogue. a beautiful swan that failed to take flight. So what is the AVS-36? A failure? No, absolutely not. It is a great, tragic, and beautiful dream. It was a desperate leap forward, an attempt by a young country to jump over an entire technological era in one go and end up ahead of the whole planet. It is a monument to the genius of Sergey Simonov, who saw the future but was ahead of it by 15 or 20 years. Imagine if the USSR's industry had been ready, if the reliability issues had been solved. Perhaps the German soldiers advancing in 41 would have faced not outdated Mosins, but a hail of automatic fire from the trenches. This could have changed the course of the first, most terrible months of the war. The AVS-36 became a most important lesson. It showed the limits of the possible. It was a testing ground for ideas and technologies. Many of Simonov's developments were not wasted and were later used in other weapons. It was the first Soviet automatic weapon adopted for service and paved the way for everything that came after. For the SVT, for the PPSH, for the AK. It is a beautiful swan that was released into the murky waters of industrialization and the cruel realities of a great war. It could not fly as high as its creator dreamed, but the very fact of its birth will forever remain in history as a testament to the audacity, courage, and incredible creative power of the Soviet weapons school. So our saga about the AVS-36 has come to an end. It was a story about dreams and reality, about genius and the system. And now a question for you, friends. What do you think? Was the fate of the AVS predetermined? Or was there a chance that, had the USSR solved its production problems, this rifle could have become the main rifle of the Second World War? Write your opinion in the comments. Let's debate. This topic is worth it. And of course, if this story touched a nerve with you, if you want to continue delving into such detective stories from the world of history and technology, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Your support helps us search for and tell the most exciting stories. See you soon in new materials.